Most athletes are trying to get recruited completely backwards. They're contacting 10 to 30 schools and using 3-minute highlight videos to coaches who have never heard their name, and they're wondering why they're not getting any results. Now, over the last few years, we have helped hundreds of athletes across 14 different sports generate more than $15 million in scholarships. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact system that's working right now to help football players get recruited for college, even if they're not 5-star athletes. So without further ado, let's dive in. The first thing you need to do is compete on subjective terms instead of objective terms. Here's what that means. There are two types of terms, objective and subjective. Objective terms are where there is a standard and you either meet it or you don't. It's pretty black and white. So for instance, if I'm a college coach and I'm looking for players who can run a 4.6 40 and you run a 4.9, I'm not interested. Now, if you're not a 5-star football recruit, then there's a good chance that you don't really stack up that well on paper. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't help a collegiate program. It just means that you have to market yourself differently to college coaches. So instead, what you want to do is you want to compete on subjective terms. That means that you want to compete on opinions. I'll give you an example. When I was getting recruited, there were two schools who came to watch me at the same game, Virginia Tech and Mississippi State. And after that game, each of those coaches had completely different opinions of how they thought I played. Virginia Tech didn't think that I was good enough for their program. Mississippi State, on the other hand, gave me a really nice scholarship. So you might ask, how does that happen? Two coaches watching the same player, the same plays in the same game. And the answer is that every coach has their own opinions of a player. And if you are not a 5-star recruit, then you want to compete on those opinions, on those subjective terms, not the objective black and white ones. Now, for a skill-based sport like football, what that means is that you want to compete on video, not on stats. This means you need to be careful about sharing any stats, biometrics, or weak accomplishments anytime you're communicating with college coaches. So point number 1, compete on subjective terms, not objective terms. The second thing that you need is mass exposure. One of the biggest mistakes that families make is not contacting enough schools. Most families contact anywhere between 20 and 30 schools and wonder why they only get 2 to 3 responses. This is actually fairly common. The typical response rate is going to be around 10%, so that's kind of what you'd expect. So the math doesn't lie. If you are not a 5-star recruit, then you should consider contacting at least 100 schools. That way, the math is always on your side. The easiest way that I found to break this up is to contact 20 schools at each division level. That'll get you to that 100 number. There was a family that we were working with not that long ago, and they had only contacted 30 schools. And they really were only talking to 1 or 2 schools at the time, and they weren't sure why that was happening. And when I told them, hey, I really think that we should go contact a whole bunch more schools, they bought in fully, and they ended up contacting 160 schools. And you know how many schools ended up responding to them overall? More than 50. That never would have happened if they had only contacted the 30 that they originally reached out to. Of all of the adjustments that you can make throughout the recruiting process, I think contacting more schools is the simplest, easiest one. Because the fact remains, the more interest that you have, the more leverage you have. As more schools want you and recruit you, you become more attractive to other schools. So if you've ever heard the phrase, the rich get richer, that's true in college recruiting too. The more schools that you have interested and the more offers you have, the easier it is to go get more interest and offers. And if you're the parent of a high school athlete who's trying to get recruited right now, but you are struggling to get the interest and offers that you want, you can click the link in the description to explore some of our programs. Now, if you want to get recruited to play college football in the end of 2025 or into 2026, then the third thing that you need is the right video strategy. Video is the single most important part of the recruiting process for skill-based sports. Now, most families in the recruiting process will take their kids' best clips, they'll smash them together into a highlight video, and they'll send that to college coaches. I don't recommend this. Coaches get hundreds of emails and DMs. They're not going to watch 5 minutes of a player they've never heard of before. Instead, what you want to do is have 3 types of videos: bait videos, hook videos, and due diligence. Bait videos are short. They're only 5 to 30 seconds, and they are for coaches who don't know who your kid is. Hook videos are typically 1 to 4 minutes, and they're a more traditional highlight video, and they are specifically for coaches who have already expressed interest in you. Then you finally have due diligence videos, which are typically either half game or full game videos. Now, the important thing to know about full game video is that it only applies to specific sports. For football, due diligence is not going to be as important for you. In a sport like basketball or soccer or lacrosse, due diligence videos are common and really important. The key with these videos is to use the right type of video at the right time in your relationship with that college coach. In general, the more conversations that you've had with a college coach, the longer a video they are more likely to watch. So for coaches who don't really know who you are, that you're not in conversation with, you ideally want to use shorter videos. The fourth thing I recommend doing to get more interest and offers in the recruiting process is to follow up more frequently. So many people are afraid of annoying college coaches, but really what they end up doing is not communicating enough. College coaches have a ton on their plate. Even if they like you as a player and they want to recruit you, they are not thinking about you all day long. In fact, in your emails and DMs to college coaches, you are more likely to get responses to your follow-ups than the initial one. We've sent more than 1 million emails to college coaches. That is not a guess or an opinion. That's a fact. We typically use a 3-email or DM sequence, and we'll share different video and different tidbits of information in each message. We often space those messages out anywhere from 4 to 5 days apart, and you will likely find that more responses come from the follow-ups than the initial message. Now, when families are reaching out to college coaches, there are a few common mistakes that I see a lot. The first is that the message is too long. Remember, college coaches are getting hundreds of these every single week. They don't want to read a long essay. The second is including bad stats. We started off this video by talking about the difference between objective and subjective terms. Remember, you don't want to compete on objective terms if you are not a 5-star recruit. So be careful including stats that maybe don't highlight your best qualities. Another common mistake I see is what I call information overload. Information overload is when you want to share all of the good things about why a college coach should recruit you, but you end up providing so much information that you paralyze the coach. They end up looking at so much stuff that they don't even know what to do with it all. In your initial messages to college coaches, you want to provide the bare amount of information and share your videos. There will be other conversations down the line to share more about your personality and the rest of your game. And one thing you have to know is that these messages to college coaches only have one job: get the coach to watch your video. If you've done that, you've written a good message. Now, if you really want a lot of interest in offers, the 5th thing that you should do is play the long game. So many parents and athletes are quick to rush the process. And in doing that, they tarnish relationships that otherwise would have led to scholarship offers. If your kid isn't a 5-star recruit, expect the process to take anywhere from 8 to 12 months. You're not going to send an email or DM and immediately get an offer. If you do, your kid is really good. What it's probably going to look like is an email or a DM, and then they're going to watch your video, and then you're going to send more video to them, and you're going to have a phone call, and then you're going to send more video to them, and then you're going to go on a visit, and then you're going to have another phone call, and then you're going to get the offer. There will be many steps in between your initial contact and when you actually get the scholarship offer. The families who stay in the game the longest are usually the ones who get the most scholarship offers and the biggest ones. Part of the reason that is because the longer that you're in the process, the easier it is to build more leverage. Leverage in the recruiting process is the interest in offers that you currently have. The more leverage you have, the easier it is to get more offers. Remember, the rich get richer in college recruiting too. The final part of the process is converting the interest that you have into scholarship offers. I can't tell you how many families we talk to who have been able to generate interest before, but they're not sure how to nurture that interest over a longer period of time. They generate interest and then they lose it, and they generate interest and then they lose it. And they have what I call leaky bucket syndrome, which means that they continue to fill up the bucket with water or interest, but it floats out the other side and they're never able to make actual progress. Getting exposure in the first conversations in college recruiting is typically not the hardest part. Usually, the hardest part of the process is turning the light interest that you have into more serious interest and eventually a scholarship offer. This often includes many touch points and some pretty delicate communication. So there you have it. That's the system that's working for football players right now who are trying to get recruited by awesome schools. And much of what I've explained here in this video actually works for lots of different sports. But obviously, what I've given you here in this video is just an overview. There's a lot more that we could dive into, and we could get pretty darn specific. So if you're serious about giving your kid the best possible chance of getting recruited by an awesome school and hopefully landing a really nice scholarship, then click the link in the description to learn more about our programs and how we work with families in the college recruiting process to make that happen. We've worked with hundreds of families across 14 different sports and generated more than $15 million in scholarships. We're familiar with the transfer portal, NIL, roster caps, and what we're doing is just working right now. So if you want the fast track to interest and offers, you can click the link in the description. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video.